Enjoy the show.
Beaming at you from the depths of the internet.
This is the Temple of Geek Podcast, your one stop for all things geek.
All things geek.
Welcome to the Temple of Geek Podcast. My name is Monica, and I will be your host as we discuss Peacock's limited series, The Resort. The Resort is a multi-generational, coming-of-age love story disguised as a fast-paced mystery about the disappointment of time. The series takes place around the events of an anniversary trip and stars William Jackson Harper as Noah and Cristin as Emma. They're on vacation in the Mayan Riviera celebrating their 10th anniversary. Their marriage is in a rough spot where Noah has been fairly complacent and happy with his life, but unfortunately Emma feels like their marriage and life aren't where she'd want it to be. The trip puts the marriage to the test when the pair finds themselves embroiled in one of the Yucatan's most bizarre unsolved mysteries, a mystery that took place 15 years prior. If you haven't seen the entire season of The Resort, go ahead and hit pause, save this episode for later, come back, because there will be spoilers. If this is your first time tuning into the Temple of Geek Podcast, welcome. The Temple of Geek Podcast has been around since 2012 and is hosted by a variety of geeks from the Temple of Geek team. Here we cover all manner of geek and pop culture news and events. To our returning listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you being here. My name is Monica. Today we're going to be joined by two guests. Can you please introduce yourselves to our listeners and tell them a little bit about yourself?
All right, so I'll go first. Hi, my name is Maria, returning guest of Temple of Geek. You may know me as Call Me by the Same Maria on TikTok. I love to overanalyze TV shows, and I love all fandoms in film. I like to escape and hyperfixate and get really deep into any show I watch, so this is perfect for me. And if you want to hear my overanalysis, deep dives, please follow me on TikTok, and I will definitely be talking The Resort later this week because this was a crazy show.
Hi, my name is Sahila. Same as Maria, I love TV, I love movies. I also love overanalyzing, but my thing is I always like trying to predict what's going to happen. And so I've got a few theories up on my TikTok page, most of which have panned out.
Yeah, they have. I can vouch for that.
But yeah, that's like what I do in my fun, just for fun. Like that's how I enjoy watching TV and shows. And because my family doesn't enjoy me pausing and waiting and analyzing, I've just been doing this on TikTok instead. So if you want to kind of see more predictions, wild theories and things like that, you can follow my TikTok page.
That's really why I started too.
I love it. It's why I follow you guys. It's great.
Yeah, my family got so annoyed with me talking all the time about TV shows, so I was like, okay, I'll do it on TikTok. So I completely get it.
Yeah. My sisters are very like casual TV watchers, whereas like I'm like, and not really on purpose, but I can just like pick up on a lot of really little things. I'm like, oh, this is going to happen. That's going to happen. And I try not to ruin it for them, but it's just so exciting for me when I can like see things coming up, whether I'm right or wrong, it doesn't matter. It's just like the excitement of being like picking up on little things and putting dots together.
Yeah. And so Holly is also a The Good Place fan, Monica.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, one of my all-time favorite shows.
Yeah, it's like the one thing we always have in common. So it's awesome to find more The Good Place fans.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, and then for those new listeners, my name is Monica. I'm the editor-in-chief at Temple of Geek and sometimes host of the podcast, and I cannot wait to get into this with you guys. So overall, just go ahead and give me like your general, not deep dives, just general overall thoughts and feelings on this series.
I mean, it was a wild ride for sure. I love how they did the whole little spoilers, time travel thing with it without making it like emphasis on time travel. I just like that it was like a background thing. It was more about like the relationship and what everyone was going through. Just like not just Noah and Emma, the Frias like son, he was also going through something. Alex was also going through something, and it blended so many genres so well together. So I really enjoyed it. I want them to have a season 2. I don't know if I know it's a limited series, but I would really like them to like delve into it further.
Yeah, same. I really enjoyed how they set everything up and they didn't dive right into like the sci-fi element of it. They kind of hinted at it, like literally the very first quote that you see on screen. But I was like, that could have been, leading into time travel, which it did. But at the same time, that quote itself, like, isn't just specific to that. It's about, just about individual people going through their life and then, looking back at their life and, wishing things would go differently. But you can't really do anything about your past and people who are kind of dwelling on it. And you can see that in every single character, that they're dwelling on things from their past and it's like preventing them from moving forward. And so I really enjoyed kind of the individual characters' journey as well as like their interpersonal relationships. Balthazar just calling it as it is and being like super ruthless with his like, analysis of everybody. Just really, really well done. The acting was phenomenal. The pacing was great. The way they transitioned between, the old timeline and the current timeline was awesome. Really well done.
Yeah, for me, I felt like this was art. It's been a long time since I've seen a show that I felt like, wow, this is like art. This is like real, not that other things aren't real storytelling, but this is real unique. And I wasn't expecting it to have a sci-fi element. Like maybe I missed it in the trailer, maybe I missed it in other things, but I really did just think it was a murder mystery. So I was really excited for like what I didn't know.
Yeah.
So when I started hinting at these things, I was like, oh, is this like a Destiny thing? Or is it... So when it turned out to be like a Destiny / sci-fi thing, I was like, wow, mind blown. Unlike you, Suhaila, I was terrible at predicting. I didn't know what. And I was like really stressed out too towards the last couple episodes.
Oh yeah, that last 2 episodes were so stressful.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what genre would you guys consider this?
I think it's like a blend of so many. Because it's like, I had like a suspicion. I love time travel, so I always want everything to be time travel. So I will say that like it was more like it was a self-fulfilling prophecy that I'm like, I want this to be about time travel. So I was just hoping it would be sci-fi because you know how much I love sci-fi. But I love that it started out with like marital problems and relationships and just getting to know people and like the relationships. But then I love that it was like kind of like an adventure murder mystery at the same time. So it was a blend of genres, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the comedy part of it as well.
Oh yeah, it was a comedy too. I forgot about that.
Yeah, like it's not like specifically a comedy, but like the timing of how they, cut between scenes, some of the delivery of the lines was just so funny to me, and I really, really enjoyed that because it's like in between all of the like the chaos and the stress of the murder mystery and the what's going on and trying to figure things out and the detective work and everything. There's like these little like moments of comedy that just take you out of that like, anxiety. It's so well done.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great point that you bring up is that it takes you out of the anxiety because there were times where I was so stressed out and then all of a sudden there's like a fart joke and I'm like,
one of my favorite jokes is like it's not a joke, but like her tooth, like that like running theme of like that story, and like I think it's like the last scene of like not the season finale, but like the last episode, and like that's what happens with her tooth, and I was just like I remember I burst out laughing because like in that moment it was like such a high stress time, like we're literally right there, and then her tooth, it's like her mouth is swollen and she can't talk.
Yeah,
it just they sprinkled it in so well.
So I was going to say with that scene, it was also really emotionally heavy from the previous events of, the night before and everything. And so you're sitting in that like emotional heaviness and then all of a sudden they're pulling out her tooth.
Yeah, I don't even know what I would classify this. I really went in thinking it was like murder mystery, like a comedic murder mystery, like, That's kind of how they pitched it. I had the chance to meet the cast at San Diego Comic-Con and interview them a little bit about it. And they really, like, at that point, we'd only seen like 2 episodes, I think. And they really didn't like spoil anything for us. So I went in kind of like, oh my gosh, this is like so different than what I thought in my head. So I think it is sci-fi kind of. Yeah. But
it sprinkles in all the genres so well. Like he blended it. Yeah.
Plus it's a love story too. Yeah, so it's like 2 love stories really.
Like young love and like also like grief and loss was like such a heavy theme throughout of it. So it was just like reflective and drama, yes, almost. They blended all the genres, I think.
I was gonna say, I think it's a reflection of real life plus the like sci-fi fantasy element.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a Prime Video series called Night Sky with J.K. Simmons. That series is sci-fi, but it doesn't feel like sci-fi. And it has some action adventure, even though it's kind of a very slow-paced show. But it kind of gave me a little bit of the same vibes, where it was so much more about the people in the story than like the fantastical things happening around it. You know, I'm much older than you guys. I think I might have children in your guys' age. So like the 10-year marriage situation that they kept referring to as the puberty of marriage, and like all of those things were so incredibly relatable to like just life. There's so many things that Balthasar was going through and the way his life was and the expectations his family had for him and things like that. So much of that is so relatable. And even just like, leave me alone, man. I just want to do my job and live life.
I loved her analogy, Emma's analogy with vacation being just like life. Like in the beginning, it's so exciting. And then after a while, you're like, I want to go home. And then when you go home, you're like, I want to go back on vacation. And I just like, I've been feeling that way right now because I feel really stuck in life. And I was like, I want to go on vacation. I'm like, do I want to go on vacation, or do I just like think I want to go on vacation? Because eventually you get homesick, and then that cycle. And just, it was a very relatable show in a very like existential way.
Yes.
What did you guys think of the storyline itself?
Which one? Because there was so much going on.
So let's start with like the big overarching one, which is kind of, you know, this is like a destiny, fate thing, and all these people. What it felt like to me was that they were all meant to be there and meant to fuck this thing.
I mean, I love those. I'm like a sucker for those shows. So, like, I mean, that's why I love The Good Place. Like, everyone's meeting each other. I love that, like, Alex was the one that planted the phones. I love that. I love the editing of this show because, like, the way they were able to clip things. So, because they were doing, like, a time jump, essentially, the whole time. Like, 2007, 2022. And they were able to, like, line things up so perfectly. Like, one of my favorite scenes is the cell phone scene when they're, like, reading the cell phones of, like, the two kids meeting. And it's just, like, after they had the head injury. And just the editing's so good. So, like, overall, I just, like, love the idea that, like, these people are all, like, relating to each other, interacting with each other, even though they're, like, 10 years apart. So I think it was really well done, and I loved it.
Yeah, agreed. I think they did a really good job. And even when you look at like the visual transition between the two timelines, they do it so well and so seamlessly, and they do it in a way that like the story continues. Like there's one part as well where they're up in the penthouse, and like both sets of couples are up in the penthouse, and they're all like exploring whatever, and then they both hear somebody coming up the elevator or like a sound or something that scares them, and then they both go into the into the closet to hide. And it's just like seeing like the parallels, and even when it's, you know, there is like an interaction between the two timelines, but there's also a lot of similarity between their journeys, which is really interesting because they are very different parts of their life, very different like relationship statuses, if you can call, you know, both of those, you know, couples being in relationships. But you can see kind of the difference between the two, but then also the similarities. And I think it speaks to how a lot of people, we share a lot of very similar human experiences, even in very different parts of our lives, even with our lives being very different.
I really liked when Balthasar has like his like conspiracy board. He's got everybody's, and then they start pointing out
like he like goes all in for it too. He's so great.
Yeah. What did you guys think about the murder mystery part? Now, Suhaila, you said that you predicted a lot of this. What did you predict, and what did you get wrong?
So I knew that there was going to be, or at least I thought there was a very good chance that there was going to be some sort of time jumping, time travel sort of situation. And then I even told Maria after the first, I think, 2 episodes, the body that they pull out is going to be Sam's older body, like Sam as an older person, the older version of Sam. And if you pay attention to the very end of the finale, it all comes full circle, and Sam is Alex.
He starts playing with his ear, yeah.
Even before that, so before I think.
Wait, what? You think Sam is Alex?
Yeah.
I think he's like
So,
he's destined to be Alex because like he's also going to have his memory leakage coming out soon.
Yeah. So it could be symbolic that he's destined to turn into him, or it could be literal.
Yeah.
Because there's a few Easter eggs in there. I don't know. Do you want me to dive into it?
Well, yeah, I was like, I have another theory about, I guess
I didn't take that away, so tell me.
I think Alex is who the author traveled with.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
and I think Sam is going to be like not literal Alex, destined to be future Alex. So that's my theory. She and I have talked about this a lot.
So do you guys think that the author, Ibarra, I can't remember his first name, Ibarra.
Yeah.
Do you think that he did travel, or you think he didn't go into the cave and just saw his friend travel?
He saw his friend travel and he didn't go because remember when Sam was just like, you didn't go in, did you?
Yeah, that was implied to me.
Yeah. But I think Alex did, and that's why he was so like paranoid essentially whenever he read the book. He's like, this is about me. Because like, yeah, he had memory losses, which I thought was like a great allegory of dementia. Like for me, like the medical student in me was just like, oh my God, this is such a good allegory of dementia. Like you read things that like hint at something, but like you cannot place them or explain what it is. So like when he read the book, he was just like, this is me. He was trying to explain to the kids, like, this is me. I'm like, they will realize that maybe he did have like a past life where he probably did travel with the author, and he wrote about his like adventure. So yeah, I'm convinced Alejandro is Alex, the owner of the time, like the hotel.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, I think so for sure. I just didn't tie in the Sam being Alex eventually.
Yeah.
Thing.
Well, he like started playing with his ear. And Balthazar was like, what did Balthazar say? He said something very like...
He's like, why did you scratch
what did you just do? Why did you scratch your ear?
Yeah.
And then before that, he says, I don't remember, when he asks him what he had seen in the pool.
Right.
So I wonder, and this is just me like speculating now after hearing both of you speak, is do you think that he's going to like... the same thing might happen to Violet? Like people that go through this start to have like memory leaks or it's some kind of paradox where they...
But
yeah, that's what I understood it.
Yeah, Violet remembered what she saw. So I wonder.
She did. And we don't know whether I think Emma, she started seeing things and they sort of like, when they had the camera on her face and there was like that overlay of like the waves and things like that. Like I think she was seeing and hearing things.
You can hear the baby cry.
And I think she still remembers as well. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But William Jackson,
but I think like spending
Noah's voice like brought her back.
Yeah. And I think like spending time in that pool does cause that memory leakage, which is why Ilan Ibera doesn't seem to have that. But Alex, who again, I do agree is Alejandro does.
Which makes sense because like as like a geek of time travel fantasy type thing, it makes sense that like if you would spend so much time in a memory essentially of the past, you would start to have like memory leakage essentially because it's like what is real life, what is your memory, like it kind of overlaps so much that like it all blends in that you don't know what's a memory and what's real anymore. So it makes sense that if you spend so much time in a memory, you wouldn't know anymore what is a memory.
Yeah. The way I also interpreted it for Alex was that he was going frequently to Pasaje and that he was actually traveling between times through that, and that's why his memories were all jumbled up because he had like so because he kept going back and forth, and with that forgetting, he didn't really know what was happening now or when. And when he was, recording the message on the phone before he left Violet's phone for Noah to find, he was saying, I don't know when I am. Not I don't know where I am, but he specifically said when twice. True. And so he's not really sure what part of his journey he's in, like what part of time. And I think when you see him, see that vision of the hotel, being destroyed, it's not necessarily that it wasn't anything like prophetic or, seeing the future. It was a memory that was being unlocked because he kept traveling back and forth.
And that already happened, or he's already been there.
Yeah, the expression he said, I don't know when I am, reminded me of something, but I cannot place it. I'm sure you both remember. Like someone else in some other series that is sci-fi has said, I don't know when I am or where I am, and I cannot place it. When he said it, I was just
it could be something Doctor Who because I feel like that.
I was like, it was very Doctor Who, not Marvel, because it couldn't be Marvel because they only did time travel recently. But I was just like, there's someone that said when I am, and whenever he said it, like I got chills. So I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's time traveling. That was like what convinced me for sure.
Yeah. And then traveling back and forth is also part of the reason that I think that Alex actually is physically Sam, but in his future self. There was a couple other hints there as well with like the skateboard and like him talking about his family and his like previous like love relationship, as well as when Balthazar just starts to tell his story. He's like, some people say he just wandered in from the jungle. Other people think that, you know, his parents were like hedge fund managers, and his dad, I forget the name of the actual book, but in the plane his dad was holding a something for dummies that seemed very businessy.
The seven habits of highly effective people, which was interesting because I was in my, so this is set in 2007, right? Something like that.
Yes.
So I was 27 at that time, and so like I remember my manager at work at the time. I worked at I was like a cell phone dealer, and I worked at, I think at the time it was like called Singular Wireless. I don't know what it is now.
I remember that.
But they gave me that book to read, and it was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It was a best-selling book at the time, and then like the whole Razor phone thing.
Oh, the Razor
that was like
phone.
Yes.
Like 2007 I remember whenever I graduated college, and I remember everyone had a Razor. So yeah.
Yeah,
that was like the height of
pink one, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, you got the pink one!" And I was like, "I got
the pink one." I had a chocolate, so like I was a different one. But no, the more you talk about it, I definitely see the same Alex thing. I just kind of see it as like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost. Like he's just destined to become the future Alex. I think Alex is the one that's the most aware of the time travel, because I don't think Sam is aware yet.
Yes.
So
no, I don't think so. Not yet. I think he's still really confused. And that brings up a really cool point. I love the world building around this, because I know it's a limited series, but they really could go somewhere. Maybe not so much with Sylvia and Emma.
That's why I want season 2.
Because there's that scene at the end where Balthazar says, "Oh, I found something," and he had been clipping newspapers at one time to Luna. So I'm like, okay, so like maybe it's something else. And then there was a lot of, I know we said we'd talk about this later, but there's a lot of unanswered questions. Like, for example, why did he hate the iguanas? Like, why was he chopping off the iguana's head? Like, I feel like that was never...
Like, I also think like it's a good detective series, because I know it's like a murder mystery, but like Balthazar is like kind of laying down the groundwork of like he wants to become a detective, and like the way the ending ended was like it just seems like he's on to his next journey and next detective work. Like kind of like Knives Out 2 is about to come out. Like it just gave me those vibes. I'm just like, this would be so cool if he just continued. They could easily, like, I'm so invested in these characters. They could easily do a season 2.
Oh, I was going to say, speaking of unresolved things, we don't actually know what happens to Alex after he places the phones down, because he's now in 2022. Maybe he traveled back, maybe not. But what I think may have happened is, and this is like totally out there theory, but when I saw that brochure and I saw Luna's expression for it, because at first she was shocked and then she smiled, I have a feeling Alex may have gone to open up another resort, and he sent the brochure to Balthazar. Again, there's no basis or anything substantial. This is just what I think, which is why Balthazar was like excited to go, and why Luna ended up smiling. But then also when you look at the jacket, it's the 3 of them. Yeah. Like when he turns around and he's walking away, it's the 3 of them during the night of the fireworks. And so maybe he's off to another adventure with Alex. Who knows?
What's interesting about Luna is I have a feeling there was more that she knew than she let on.
Oh yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
When I spoke to her at Comic-Con, she said, "Oh, she has these tidbits of information that she's holding on to." But the whole time she feels a little bit like more mature than Balthazar, even though they look about the same age. But, you know, she's talking about marriage and all these kind of things. And as if she's
a family.
Yeah. And so then I'm just like, okay, like, what does she know? What has she been through? And like, she's like not like Violet, obviously, but like a Violet type. Maybe she has been able to kind of go in the pasaje.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, speculation or whatever, but I think there's more to Luna than we got to see.
100%, because like she even said, like
100%.
this was like the most telling line, was that it's happening all over again. Whenever like she saw Noah running looking for his wife, they like focused in on her character for a reason, that like she was the one that was aware that Balthazar is frantically looking around, Noah's looking around, and she was just like, it's happening again. So it's like she clearly knows. She knows the patterns. She knows the cycle. Mm-hmm. So, like, I think she knows a lot more, and she avoids it for a reason.
Yeah,
and I think she's also, holding back.
They brought in the helicopter. Like, how did you know?
How did she drive a helicopter? She also can run the fastest. Like, she was just like the action person. Like, she was getting stuff done. So I was like, she's lived a lot of lives. We need to know more about her.
Yeah. And I think she's holding back some information to like protect Balthazar or Emma and Noah. Like, I think she's like, she knows what the potential of what could happen, and she's seen this before, and she understands way more than we saw that she did. Although you can kind of see with her facial expressions. The actress is such a good job with the facial expressions. I love her character you just know. Yeah. But she is the voice of reason, and she's trying to ground everybody with their like, crazy theories.
One of the cutest things she did is like she like told Noah's secret, like Noah and Emma's secret to Balthazar about like the baby, and then he's like, "Oh, she's terrible at keeping secrets." So I'm just like, "I'm terrible at keeping secrets." Like, I love this about her. She's like building the connection that they needed to understand that they all had like experienced loss, and like I'm sure she did it with reason, with like knowing that like, okay, they have gone through something. That is why they're destined to meet you. So like, I love that she was able to open up Noah, but also like divulge their secret to Balthazar in a way that like, was helpful to their journey.
Yeah, and even in the scene before that, when Balthazar is asking his questions, you can tell that she understands Noah and Emma and what they're going through, and she can see Balthazar's questions being too close to home. And so she's even telling him that like, what are you doing? Why are you asking these questions? As like a way to prevent him from getting into their pain, but he does it anyways.
Yeah.
There's a couple scenes that really hit home for me when it came to Balthazar and Luna. And one of the things is that when they are just the two of them together, they're speaking Spanish. Yeah. They're not speaking English, right? But their Spanish is like a particular Spanish. It's a very slang, very like kind of, it's not a proper Spanish, right? So it's like, it's very much how you would talk to like a buddy or a friend. So it felt really authentic. And I absolutely love that, because you don't get like authentic, like, Mexican slang most of the time, where it's not like some kind of stereotype, right? And I think it's really well done. But also when you see two Mexican actors that are not like drug dealers or cartel or like just the house cleaning maid or whatever, it's really exciting for me. And yes, was she like a hotel worker, Luna? Yeah, but she was like so much more outside of that. She's not always just in her uniform. She's out there with them. The fact that they had the fruit cups and they were eating out of like the cup while they were walking around and putting like the tahini on the on the fruit. Oh my God. I was like, the show is so beautiful.
And Balthazar was not just like a hotel manager or detective. He like was an empire. Like he was like a fashion empire like child.
He was well dressed.
Yes. This is something that like actually stood out to me about the show, is because like, I don't know if you guys have heard the show The White Lotus, I believe, but it's also about like a show about people that are on a resort and how they kind of the locals dirty in that one, because like they're there but they're like very stereotypical. I really appreciated that like the locals were the main characters. Like for a while, like I was very invested in Noah and Emma, because obviously it's Cristin and like William Jackson Harper, we love them. But then after a while I'm just like, I want to know more about Balthazar as a kid. I want to know more about Luna. Like I just like I was more invested in the locals, and I was really happy that they probably shot this on location, but they made sure they focused and emphasized the culture and the people that they were there in a very respectful way. So I'm really happy you say that, Monica, because that was something that I was concerned about as well.
I loved it. It was shot in Puerto Rico, but I mean, jungle aesthetic.
Yeah.
I think they did a really great job making it feel like the Yucatan. But honestly, one of my favorite things was the fight between the brothers.
Oh, yeah, that was amazing. That was so good.
I'm sorry, guys. What was that? Like, I loved it so much. It was so like what a wacky show.
Yeah, Balthazar is the hero. Like Balthazar is like a superstar. I really want to just keep watching him. It's funny because like we talked about him, Monica. I think like how like attractive he is, and then I saw like the recent Charlie's Angels, and he's in it, and I was just like, why isn't this man in more roles? He is he's like a side character in the recent Charlie's Angel with Kristen Stewart.
Yeah,
he's like he's barely in it. So like I was like, this man needs to be in I would rather him be in a series. I would follow this man as a detective through anything he does.
Yeah, he was in Narcos Mexico as well.
Oh, okay.
On Netflix. But this was great. Yeah. Like I said, like the representation, not having to do anything with like drug dealing, and their family empire was clothing. It wasn't like some kind of
it was so good.
Whatever, we make clothes. I come from a line of tailors, like
it was so good.
And like, you don't need violence to like have power or whatever, right? Like
with the whole like beef with the author and him, whenever William Jackson Harper's Noah was like, "Did you kill him?" He's like, "No, we just got him fired." He's like, "You can ruin someone's life without killing them," and I was like, yes, this is just so good. Yeah. It was such a great like diversion from the stereotype and trope.
Yeah. And the scene where they find him up in when he finds them in the penthouse and they go after him, and Emma like is holding like that golf club, and she's like, "You did this and you did that and you whatever," and he's like, "You have no evidence of any of this. You just jumped to like these ridiculous conclusions and made me the bad guy with zero evidence." And I love that they included that because as an audience, we did the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like they kind of lit us there as well, right?
Up that way. Yeah.
Yeah, with Frias and everything as well. Like they're purposely making you like feed into the stereotype and then be like, gotcha.
Yeah.
Being like, it's not always like that. Yeah. I loved it. And it's interesting that you also bring up White Lotus, because if I did watch the show, I wasn't really like super invested in it. Like, I understand that it's more of like a drama, interpersonal relationships, but even the like hotel staff that they focused on were white, or at least like the main guy was white. And I really appreciated that in this show, all of like the important side characters, or everybody that was driving forward the story, aside from the main cast, were people of color, or specifically Mexicans or Latinos, which is amazing.
With like the people of color with the white people, actually, no, it was like, it was over. Yeah, it was. I'm just really happy that like they were able to do like an off-location setting, but then they showed the people of that location, because it's like, okay, diversity is one thing, but you also need to show the locals whenever you're doing, and that's like the argument with White Lotus is like, especially because I think it was Hawaii that they shoot it in. There's always just like whenever you shoot off location, the locals always feel some type of way. So like the best thing you can do is like at least show them properly. So. Even though it was Puerto Rico or a Caribbean island, like I actually lived in the Caribbean island for 5 years, so like I felt really like at home while watching this. Yeah, I lived in Antigua and Barbuda actually for 5 years for medical school. So my mom and I are watching this show now, and she's like, "I'm so happy you're showing this to me afterwards," because it's about college students running like going missing, and she's like, "You were a college student you could have gone missing during that time," and I was like, "This is why we're watching it now." After I'm home, now that I'm home, but yeah, it hits so close to home because like hurricanes happen, people do go missing. And it's like not in a scary way, but like not in like a time travel way, but like it's just it just while watching it, I was just like, this just reminds me of like what Caribbean life is like, or like what vacation life is like. Like the locals are people that live around there. They have a whole life. They have like a history. So I think they did it very well. I didn't watch White Lotus, but I've heard a lot of things about how they didn't do the locals justice. So I was happy that this show did.
Yeah, even the helicopter.
Oh, sorry. I would like to recommend, before we like get off this topic, is if you want like a resort type show that's really funny and like wonderful, is called Acapulco. It's on Apple TV, and it's a spin-off of How to Be a Latin Lover.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard the movie and not the show, so.
Okay, so it's a prequel to the movie, and it's hilarious. It takes place in Acapulco on a resort, and it's like drama in the cast and stuff like that. But it's a hilarious show, very beautiful in its representation of Acapulco and Mexican culture, and just like people of color. And it's half Spanish, half in English, but it's like it's nice. So well done and so hilarious. Yeah. It's like really funny. I highly recommend. if you want a resort show.
No, I would definitely tell her. I need to hear of it. I know my mom and I watched the Land Lover one for sure. So, yeah.
Nice. I've added it to my list of things to watch.
That and the J.J. Simmons one I've added to.
Yeah, Night Sky.
I've never heard of that one.
Night Sky is a different kind of sci-fi. So different.
Amazon Prime does sci-fi so well, so I'm really excited to watch that.
Yeah,
Expanse and then Paper Girls,
Expanse.
Yeah, I just started it, so I'm really excited. It's so good. Yeah,
when you get to season 2 and 3, I need to know because for me,
there's just been so many shows, but I'm like,
yeah,
it's so good.
I just think it's the best one ever.
Yeah.
All right, I get excited about it.
I know it's my favorite show, so I was like, we'll talk about it later.
There's a video game coming. Okay, that's it.
It was awesome. Okay, sorry. So cool. Okay.
I'm done. Yeah. So before we go into, I do want to talk about characters individually, but did you guys have a favorite character?
I really love Balthazar. I love Balthazar.
I was going to say, Balthazar was my favorite.
It's so sad that we only got him for half the show, but I cannot remember the show before him. Right? Another thing against Emma, because I love Cristin Milioti. She's so good. She's in this show called Made for Love. That's another sci-fi show that I would highly recommend. It's so good. So she carried it. I love William Jackson Harper, obviously. I love that man. But Balthazar came on screen, I was just like, who's the rest of everyone else? I could not remember their names. Because Balthazar, he's a star in the making. He just sold the show. Detective work, lead, he just did a great job. The whole scene with the author, that episode was so good with the pen. It's just, I cannot believe this was his first series where he was the main. I really want more of him. He was so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think when he showed up in the show, the entire tone, the entire atmosphere, everything in the show changed.
Completely.
It was a lot more dramatic and kind of, I want to say broody a little bit, kind of before he showed up. And then he came in and he's just this dose of realness, this dose of
and very
drama and comedy and everything.
And human. He was so human. The way he connected everything. He brought up his loss with his own, I think, father, and trying to get that emotion with Emma. Because Emma was a little cold. And also Nick Offerman is in the show, and I love Nick Offerman. And yet I still forgot about him and focus on Balthazar. So that's saying a lot about
he looks
the actor.
So different.
Yeah. Every time Nick Offerman is in a show, I'm very, very, very focused on him. Even in he's in A League of Their Own. I was very focused on him in that moment, but Balthazar was able to get me focused only on him. He had a very human touch. He had a very sci-fi touch, a detective touch. Every genre I think blended well because of his character.
Yeah. And I think even with the I was going to say with the other characters, I know that they're technically the main characters, Emma and Noah, but we know so much more about Balthazar than we do about the two of them.
True.
We see a little bit of a glimpse into their past and we understand a little bit of them kind of where they're at right now. But Balthazar, we know so much of his story and he just reveals so much. Yeah. And he's the reason that we also learned. Yeah. And he's the reason that we learn about so many of the other characters as well. And he introduced us to Luna and Alex and a lot of the other characters. So I actually think he is the main character. Yeah. It's just not obvious.
Give this man a spin-off is what I'm hearing.
Yes. I agree. Especially with the way the show ended, it almost felt like it was setting up for a spin-off.
I can totally see that.
Yeah, I would watch that spin-off for sure.
Me too. Yes.
And I would like for him to have a different suit for every episode.
Oh my God, could you imagine him sewing it too? Oh, that'd be so good.
Oh my goodness. Every one of his outfits, I had to pause and just look at the detail. There's just so much. It was so good.
Because you know that he sewed it. That was my thing. I'm I bet he did that. So
Exactly. He actually did this, he made it himself. He did all the details and the embroidery and everything.
Yeah.
I just think that the range that he had as far as acting, he can go from sad to broody to kind of menacing to super hilarious, the falling off the balcony scene with the brother and the fight.
Yes.
Being stabbed in the hand, What is that?
One of my favorite scenes about him is whenever, like, I think, I forget Ibarra, the author's name, whenever he like stabs him with a knife, with a pen that was basically like a knife, and then you just see him drunk by the pool. And he was like, "This is my fault." Like his range of like panic to like existential dread, it was just so good. I remember like I was laughing so hard because it was like such an intense scene, and then they just like clip to them all getting drunk by the pool, and I was like, "What just happened?" So it was because how strongly he was able to deliver everything for sure.
Yeah. Same with the fight with his brother. Like, there's like the jumping out of the window, but then there's the running to the car, start the car. Like, that was just Deadpool vibes.
And then he laughs it
how
off.
he's screaming. Yeah, but it's like his voice goes to like another level, and he's just like screaming at a really high pitch. He just jumps through the window, and then you see the knife land like near his head. Just the execution is just so good.
And he's so close to running back to the Harper's like shoulder. I was like, no, almost just like Ross's shoulder.
It was really, he's my favorite. I don't know how anybody else could be like the favorite of anybody. Balthazar stole every single scene.
He did. Every single one.
And the cast was stacked. Like, it was such a good cast. And yet he held his own. Because like when you think about him, he's like more of a novice compared to the rest of the cast. But he shined. He shined.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. But really, just like you said, it was stacked. That was a cast, man.
That was
like well done. Mm-hmm. Luna was amazing.
Yeah.
I loved her. Her character was so great. I know we mentioned it before, but the fact that she wasn't just like, like just the maid, right? Yeah. Just the hotel clerk or whatever. The fact that she was so smart, putting things together, both emotionally smart, right? Like emotionally intelligent, and also like, she had common sense and logic and was like, dude.
And stop. And what I loved about her is that she didn't need to be like the sexual interest. Like she wasn't the love interest. Like she was just there being a female and being smart. Like it's just so nice when a female can just be an asset and like help in a situation without having like some man attached to her. Like her and Balthazar were friends or whatever, but like at the same time he appreciated her for her like ingenuity and like her talent and her skill. So like I just love that like a female existing for like who she is was there too.
You could also see the level of their relationship when, in the very first episode when they transition to the past and then they show her going in to clean his room and then she grabs a drink from his, his stash and she's standing on the balcony drinking it, like pointedly making sure that like he watches her or he sees that, she's like up in his balcony. Like you can see like that they're on equal footing as in that friendship. And she like constantly challenges him and he does listen to her, but he's also a little bit wild.
He confides in her.
But like,
it's really important that he confides in her. Like,
exactly. And she believes him because like that's how close they are. Like she believes him, even though she's the voice of reason throughout this entire show. She believes the crazy thing that he's telling her because of just how close they are.
Yeah, and then also, the dance scene when they were all doing like the little choreographed dance. I really loved just they had a chemistry that wasn't like sexual tension or anything like that. And I thought that was really beautiful.
It was pure friendship. It was like pure friendship. So I really appreciate that.
I love seeing a man and a woman having a
I'm
platonic.
Here for it. Yeah.
It was so nice to see on screen that it can be like deep and passionate without being, and even intimate, really, without like about sex. So
and the fact that there's a trust and a level of confidence without it being sexual is just amazing, because like you see boy girl friendships, so you don't see anything that's like that level of like intimacy without it being like intimate in that way, So I want to say I really love Noah. I'm a big fan of William Jackson Harper, but like there were so many lines that he said that I just giggled so hard too. And I just love that he supported his wife through it like so much. Like I think at one point he like discloses like their sexual history to Balthazar, and he's like, I'm on vacation. And she's like, what? I just die laughing. And like him just being the one that like kind of gets Emma out of her own head and gets her out of her own way, like trusts her and believes her. Like that's the type of man we need. Like someone who's just so supportive but at the same time can ground you. I love him. I love him so much.
Yeah, and the support when she like first tells him about the mystery that she's uncovered, and like he automatically he's automatically in, he's for it, even though you can tell that it's like outside of his comfort zone kind of later on when they're going up the elevator shaft and things like that. He's still with her and he still sticks with her. There's also a moment that I really like with Noah of like a moment where the show is self-aware, where they're kind of wandering around the abandoned, broken down resort, and he's like, this is like dangerous white people stuff, like white people activities that he's doing. And he's like, I was thinking
that exact same scene, like following my white wife somewhere. I was just dying at that point. When he's the one that like rips her tooth out, I just thought it was like so ceremonious because it makes sense that she would trust him. Yeah. Because like let's be honest, like there's Nick Offerman, there's Balthazar, then there's William Jackson Harper. Of all people, I'd be like, Nick Offerman, you're going to pull my tooth out. But she trusts her husband with it. And it shows it shows that like trust that like, okay, they have been through so much in their relationship that she's like, no, if anyone's going to do it's going to be my husband, it's going to be him. And he does it. Like he passes out as soon as he does it, but he does it. And like that whole scene, I don't know what it was about that scene, but I loved it because like it's just so random. In the middle of the jungle, they have to pull a tooth out. they do it.
And it's right after they have like a pretty substantial fight. I mean, it's not like loud or anything, but like there's like, you know, a lot of like difficult emotions that they're both expressing to each other. And like, and you can even hear him or see there's when he was in the tent and she was talking to Violet's dad and she's like divulging even more information and he hears that. So like, again, it's like the heavy, like emotional, you know, setup, and then there's the comedic
it's like
kind of
like
release afterwards, but he's still
the truth is almost symbolic of like the rotting thing about their marriage, like the stuff that they've been hiding, the stuff that they've been ignoring. They just like expose it, they get it out, they like put it out there already. Like it was like almost like a symbol, because I'm so the placing of it right after that really deep conversation, right after they had their huge fight where they were saying they're going to get a divorce, and then they have this tooth scene, which was like an overlying theme of the whole series. And they have that right before the season finale. I was like, this has to be a symbolism of their own marriage and like them acknowledging the fact that they went through something and like looking at it like a rotting tooth or, you know, the very traumatic event in their marriage. So that's how I took it, at least.
You mentioned that it wasn't a loud fight, and I think that's really important because I think so many times in movies, like couple problems get depicted as like this big blowout fight thing, but a lot of the times it's the quiet, unsaid things that cause the biggest problems and that are the most painful. So for Emma, whatever regret she had with not seeing her daughter's face, or like the regret she had with not having children and all these kind of things, just all of it compounding and her not being able to say it out loud. And, you know, Noah interpreting it as, oh, she doesn't want to be with me anymore. Do you like me anymore? Yeah. And it's all these unsaid things, these quiet things, right? And that, like you said, they didn't have a blowout fight, but it was a very emotional, very tense, being not okay, you know? So I really like pointing out that it was loud.
And Noah has such like a healthy masculinity with it because he was so aware that like, I remember with his like conversation with Luna, he was just like, well, Emma didn't see her face. And he talked about like, this got me when he's like, I saw this perfect little face, but Emma didn't see it. It was just, he was so aware that it probably hurt his wife that she never got to see the baby's face. And like him just being able to not only recognize how painful it was for him as a man to go through it, but for his wife, it was just like such a healthy relationship and healthy masculinity, admitting it and being able to talk about it. So that was a very deep moment. And it happened so quickly.
I just wanted to go back to what you said about the tooth being like this example of like this rotting thing in their marriage. And there are a couple scenes like when the tooth does get brought up and and in those scenes, they're both kind of like doing things together, but they're at odds with what they actually want to do. Like Noah doesn't want to like she has like this binder full of stuff after they go and meet the detective.
Yeah.
He doesn't really want to continue, and he's like enjoying the pool, whatever. And then she leaves him, goes to like, focus on that binder. And then the tooth comes out, right?
Yeah,
there's like a disconnect in where they're at, kind of emotionally and mentally in those scenes.
And then like, later on, whenever they're in the apartment, he's just like, why didn't you tell me your tooth fell out? And she's like, it's okay. Like, so it's very much like a weird thing that they're both trying to avoid, and he's trying to get her to talk about. So I don't know. I'm not saying her tooth is a symbolic of the baby, but it felt very much like she's trying to avoid her problems and not talk about it, where he's trying to be like, hey, we went through something, let's talk about it type.
Yeah, and then the whole part where Emma's like, we're just one person now, but they're like one person not on the same page, right?
Yeah, it's
and I love the flashback scenes. Because you can see why they fell in love with each other, right? You can see why, like at some point, like they were so perfect for each other. And I like the little how they met scenes, and that was really for me. So I was cute. Like, oh. Yeah, you can see why they love each other and the trauma that happened for them to be where they are now, right? Which obviously is a baby and just like disappointing in general.
And what I really loved about the show, not just because of like, it shows loss at different levels, but like with marriage, I can't speak for this because I've never been married, but like it just shows a real depiction of marriage, because like two people that are great for each other, that work well to each other, can go through something traumatic and it can offset them, and processing and going through it would hurt any marriage. It's not that they're weak or their relationship's weak. It's just that they went through something really hard and they're still trying to deal with it. And like a vacation is not going to like fix it by any means. It's going to be a bandage over something real that could be a problem. So like I think that they showed a really healthy and real relationship of going through something very difficult. And like by showing their like meet cute and like what they've been through, they're showing the fact that they are really compatible, that they are working well together. Because like even when they started working well together on this sort of journey and like murder mystery, they did so well like together, and you could tell that they were meant to be, and that they do love each other. It's just like they went through something so hard, and that it would damage any relationship go through.
Do you two feel like maybe this was Emma, Balthazar, and Noah kind of like facing their fears? Like this whole thing was like an analogy of that. Oh, yeah. Because we see in the cave that Balthazar is like,
fighting. And even Nick Offerman, I can't remember his character's name, but I think he was also facing his fears of like losing his wife, running away from like losing his daughter. So I would say that he was also facing his fear.
Yeah, and then like Noah had to like understand that like in the cave he had to let her go and do this. Follow. He had to just let her be. So
absolutely.
Yeah. And speaking of Nick Offerman, so this is why I kind of feel like it's kind of set up for like a second season, because I feel like all that stuff that happened in between to Nick Offerman didn't need to be said. The show would have been fine if he had never said it and he just showed up and said, oh, I've been living here always looking in case I could find my daughter, right? That would have been enough. But he had this whole cartel spy, like all
crazy. When they're exploring the cave, he's just like going off about his life, and like Balthazar was like, "You haven't answered my question."
Like it's just like so crazy and random. I was like, why would they even bring that up unless he goes with Balthazar on another adventure next time?
They have to. They set it up so well. It gave me, like, I bring up Knives Out for a reason. It gives you Knives Out vibes. Like, they can easily do a next journey. Like, it could be like an anthology of a next, like, detective mystery. I would watch that for sure. 100%.
Yeah. Same. Absolutely. Also, with him telling his story, I wasn't sure whether he was kind of embellishing and like Balthazar wasn't like really believing everything he was saying. Like, it's like, okay, there's some truth, but then even when you see like the response to like the snake, they both freak out. And like Nick Offerman's character especially, I think his name is Murray, he like goes to hide. He leaves Balthazar and goes to hide. And then eventually like musters up the courage to like find the flashlight, and Balthazar saves him again. So I think there's like a little bit of embellishment there, and I think it'll be interesting to if they ever do explore that, to see like what actually happened.
And kudos to the actor that plays Balthazar, because his chemistry with everyone is amazing. Like he could be paired up with anything. And, like with him and Nick Offerman, it was so good. They were they could have given us a buddy cop show. Like I was there for it.
Yeah.
I'm there for it. He could be the muscle, you know. Nick Offerman could see it.
He works well with so many people.
Yeah. Oh man, I would love a spin-off with just Balthazar going off and doing his detective work and solving mysteries in different places. With Luna, oh my god, yes.
Yeah, I want that.
Yes, I just want their dynamic. Like just the two of them, their dynamic, because amazing.
As much as I love William and like Cristin, I like fell in love with Balthazar and Luna so much more. So like I want that. Like even if they're not in the next series, I'm okay with it. I would be happy to watch the other two. Even if they call it something different and they just do their own little thing, I would watch that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have been happy to watch like Emma and Noah just, on a resort with just like, drama within their marriage with nothing else superficial, no murder mystery, none of that. But I'm glad we got all of that because it was just such an incredible story.
There's that scene where Murray's voiceover is saying like, oh, the next chapter is heartbreaking, right?
Oh, yeah.
And yes, it is heartbreaking in the sense that you find out about Noah, you find out about like and Noah and Emma's baby and all these kind of things, like, and things start to get really deep. But there's this moment when Violet and Sam are in the water.
Yes,
and they're about to drown, and they just hold each other. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to find their bones.
Yeah.
I was like, this is it. Like, it's going to be a sad story. Like, they set it up. It's not a good story. Like, and I kept expecting they were just going to find their bodies. Like, I was not expecting a happy ending.
Yeah, same.
But I expected closure, but not a happy ending.
Especially during that moment, I think when she's like, this is going to kill my dad, like, I think I started crying because it was just really, really emotional. I don't know what I expected at that moment whenever they were looking for Pasaje, but like, whenever the water started rising, I was like, this is not good. There's this, I was really scared for the season finale because I'm like, this is not giving me good vibes by any means, because how do you survive that? Like, that's crazy. So whenever she found their bodies, I was beside myself. So I was just like, wow, what are the chances?
When Emma was stuck, and then also when the water was rising, and like they're going in there, the anxiety I had to pause and just like walk away for a second. I was like, I need to breathe, because I really felt like the anxiety and the tense, and I was like, how could there be a happy ending after that? How can anything work after this? Like, I just kept thinking, what is the rescue going to look like for Emma to pull her out of this thing? Is she going to die from like a heart attack from panic or something, right? I was thinking the worst. So the fact that it like ended so nicely with the kids being found, and like completely like it only been 5 minutes for them, like.
And what I really loved about that was not only just the juxtaposition, because we had been watching both of like the time travel happen between 2007 and 2022 happen at the same time, not only with the apartment scene, but with like them meeting, them reading their cell phone messages. So like them doing that in really high tense anxiety scene of them drowning when Emma getting stuck, and doing that as like the back and forth. I was like, oh my God, this is like, because since everything else was so similar, this has to mean something bad for both of them. Yeah. And I had just watched like House of Dragons, and they were doing that juxtaposition with that show too. And I was like, the juxtaposition between shows right now has not been good. So I was not expecting something good with this one either, by any means.
Yeah. No, I felt the same way when we like see the water rising. I was like, oh, maybe they're going to find the cave. And then as soon as like they go below the water, I'm like, that's it. Like, I don't think they're going to make it out, even though like I never thought that they were gone or dead. I just thought that they had like traveled through time or got lost somewhere. And then when Emma gets stuck, like there's two moments there for Emma that I think she really had to push through, and it was like her being stuck, like physically in that moment, but then there was also like her mentally being stuck. And you can see that she was like stuck for so long and like having to keep pushing, and at one point you see her almost give up. But then she like tries again, and then she finally gets unstuck. And then the other moment that like I worried for Emma was when she finally makes it to the pool and she sees them,
the baby.
she sees Sam and Violet being really peaceful, and then she starts seeing the baby. I'm like, is she gonna go in and also be lost in Pasaje, leaving Noah behind? And I thought she would actually do it. I'm glad she didn't, but I thought she was actually going to do it. But then, Noah's voice pulled her back. Thank goodness.
I love like the Noah's voice thing, because you just like in the episode before, I believe you see their huge fight and everyone's like, oh, they're going to get a divorce, all this stuff. But you just see like how I think her line was like, oh, I didn't want to lose time. Whenever he's like, why didn't you go in? And I got chills from that, because like you know, like as great as the memory is, it does come at the expense of the time that you lose right now, right? And that's like a big theme with time travel. Like Interstellar touches about this. Other types of time travel talks about how like when you get caught up in time travel, you miss out the present. And like the show does it again so well. And that's why I would see this as a sci-fi show, because like it does have the themes of time travel well done, even better than Marvel ever did it. So like, you know, I really appreciate that like they had William Jackson Harper's Noah's voice in the background, kind of being like the reminder of the present when she is stuck between like time traveling loops. So
one thing I like that they didn't do was the traveling back in time to change something, because you can see that like they're kind of like trying to debate like, okay, well, what do I want to do? I know Noah says he wants to go a year into the future, but you can tell Emma really wants to go back, right? And who like if given the choice wouldn't go back to change something, but they like didn't do that. And it was about getting yourself unstuck.
Yeah, they didn't even show what the time travel was, technically. Like, they didn't show...
No.
I think Violet going back and seeing her mother. Like, they didn't technically show any of the images of the past. They just kind of, like, hinted, like, okay, time travel was happening without showing it, which I think is a very unique perspective to a sci-fi show.
But yeah, Absolutely. It was really about, like, each of them individually getting unstuck from, like, dwelling on the past and being so focused on that they're no longer living. Yeah.
I really love the graphics that they use, like to show, like I don't know, it was like it looked like a storm sometimes. Sometimes it looked like a galaxy. It looked like an eye.
It was really beautifully done.
Like an oasis of sorts, like one of those like sulfur pool things. Those like hot baths that like people enjoy. Like it looked like so many different things.
Every once in a while you can kind of see like an image of like the resort, or you can see something like some kind of landscape in like the eye or whatever.
I thought it was a really cool look of a hurricane too, like the ominous feeling of like the hurricane impending doom with the eye. Like it was really cool how like the image could kind of transform in itself.
Yeah, and like it was also put in really like interesting places when like in the very beginning when Emma was in like the hot tub outside and she is like, you know, drifting off into like her memories and thoughts and whatnot. And then they kind of show that to transition her waking up in the bus. I actually think they probably took like images of scenery or something and they like wrapped it so that it ended up being a circle. So it'd be really interesting to see. And I don't know if they would ever like release or reveal this or anything, but like what the actual images that they used in order to create those graphics were and whether they had any sort of like meaning to the events of the show or just the show overall. It would be really cool.
I love that. We should ask Peacock for that.
If they did a sequel, we could get into it.
Like the equivalent of Avengers Assembled, you know, the post, you know, how
they need to do that for this show. I really love that. There's so much more that needs to be like goes into this show that they could get into. So,
and there's a lot more that we could probably discuss too. So, any final thoughts? Anything you want to mention before we sign off?
What was that little asteroid comet thing in his picture? That's the one thing I just want to know. Because I was like, what does that mean?
I feel like that was the impending doom. I feel like that was the
symbolic. Okay. Yeah.
I think it was impending doom.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was also like a line in there. I need to go back and rewatch it because I don't remember exactly what was said. But I think it was when he was in that trance and he's seeing the comet come down. Yeah. He said something about it like not like it's not the end or there's going to be something else happening afterwards. Like I forget exactly what the wording was, but it almost seemed like that hurricane or whatever was going to happen to the resort is not actually the end of the story, and there's something else that's going to happen. And, you know, whether that's, you know, the show itself just kind of revealing more things, or whether there's setting up to something else bigger that's more catastrophic in like a second season that they have to figure out.
I feel like the comet was the hurricane. I don't know how to explain it, but like there's something about the comet and the hurricane that came together, because even the hurricane like washed everything off. And like, you know, coming from Caribbean, like living in a Caribbean island, going through hurricanes, I was like, it doesn't like completely towed down a hotel like that. So I was like, I feel like the comet was symbolic of like restoring and restarting something, and so was the hurricane. So I was just like, I really.
It's also interesting that the hurricane only destroyed that resort.
Right.
Like, they didn't really show other stuff, but there's like also a ton of like, if a hurricane comes through, it's not very localized to my understanding. I've never been through a hurricane. I've only ever seen them on the news.
But it affects the whole hotel. It affects all of the island. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And just how devastated that hotel was. Like, well, what happened to the other stuff around it? Why, you know, they never really showed that, but it's like, there was very clearly like this resort specifically was devastated by this hurricane. And it was like walled off and everything.
There feels more to it. There just feels more to the whole comet hitting the hurricane hitting the hotel. It just feels very like something was happening. I don't know what it is, but yeah. It's more of a question than a comment.
Yeah. What I want to know is, where is Alex? What has happened to him since?
That's fair.
I mean, we know how his life ends. We see him going into the water during the hurricane, but there's something between him going to the future, putting down the phones, and then when Balthazar finds him, bloody hands. Like, they never explain that there's a gap there still.
Right. Like the iguana thing, they never say why they're so mad about iguanas and stuff. And I think that, like, you know, the fact that like that Sam's parents don't believe he's alive, right?
Yeah.
Things up for Sam to just be on his own, right? Like, let his parents.
They really need a sequel.
Yeah, let them live their life or whatever. And you know, I thought this was great for a streaming service like show. I thought it was perfect because it gives us. We might not have seen this on network television if it was a limited series, right? Yeah, I know that they aired it, I think, last night on
NBC,
on
right?
the actual on NBC, to kind of try to push people to go check out the, you know, Peacock app and to Peacock. But I think that this would have worked on network as well.
Oh, easily, for sure.
So I'm just wondering, depending on the success of this first season and how it goes with fans, if maybe we'll see something else in the network, at the very least, a spin-off.
Because it would be cool to do a spin-off with Balthazar during the next mission, and like Sam is suddenly like there, and like we see, like we touch base on with Sam and touch base with like Violet and see where they are now. Like, it would just, I think they left it open-ended enough that they could do something with it. So I hope they do.
Yeah. Or if it is Sam and you know, Balthazar going on these adventures, then Sam does go back in time and seeks out Balthazar and hires him as the younger version of him. Would be cool. One thing I will also say is I did like that the show was released weekly, especially with like the mystery and, you know, what was going on. Because like I said, I enjoy, you know, thinking of like possibilities of what could happen and trying to predict. And so like for me, that was really enjoyable. And I think it really helped with the suspense as well, like week to week. Like in the cliffhangers, every single one of like the episodes ended at such a great cliffhanger, and it was like the episode's going along and you're understanding, and you know, like there's a bit of mystery there and you're, you know, learning more, and then all of a sudden it just like hits you as something at the very end, like the last like 2 minutes of the episode, and you're like, wait, what? Everything I just understood is like
I was really happy we got to see the whole series together, because it was like, I can't see a cliffhanger, so whenever the cliffhanger happened, I'm like, yes, I can see the next episode. I don't have to wait. But they set it up perfectly. They set it up perfectly for the cliffhangers to like. I don't know if they're going to release the rest of the show on NBC, like the next episodes, but I think they would do really well if they did, because it was a very, very, very like compelling and enticing show.
Yeah,
compelling.
absolutely. There's so many dimensions and layers to the show that, like, even if you binge watch it, you're gonna like get to enjoy all of that. Maybe not as much the suspense in between, but there's still like they do build up suspense with the episodes, and even with the cliffhanger when you start the next episode, they usually like don't go straight into it, right? So there is still that suspense. So I think people even binge watching it would still get that experience.
I binge watched it because I have the screeners.
Yeah, so I did too.
I was able to binge watch it and I loved it as a binge. I think the only problem with binge watching a show is that I feel like the hype is like one weekend and it's over, and you don't get to celebrate like a property as much as like when you're watching it week to week. I feel like I'm a big fan of the Umbrella Academy, but binging them, I'll lose a whole night's sleep. We'll talk about it for a weekend and then never talk about it again, versus like other shows like The Boys, what I'm a big fan of, and that's hitting weekly. And you get to celebrate the thing that you love a lot longer along with the audience and everything like that. So I do appreciate the weekly episodes. I think that's totally fine. If they want to throw it all down like on a binge watch, fine, I'm a binge it. But I do appreciate
for sure. I agree.
And I do enjoy the discourse like online with people on TikTok, mutuals, friends, online, to be able to like get a chance to kind of talk and like go in depth in each individual episode, as opposed to getting like everything all at once, and then you're just kind of talking in generalities or just specific scenes, and other things sort of go by the wayside. But being able to kind of like with Kenobi, like the Star Wars show that they had, come out earlier this year, it was only 6 episodes, but there was just so much discourse and so much, like, I want to say analysis, but it's more like deep dives and like connections. It made me enjoy the show so much more as somebody who like, because that universe is so big. And even with Marvel, again, those universes are so big that it's nice to like see other people talking about it, and then it gives you a better understanding. But with, shows that are more, that are, I don't want to say smaller, but like shows that are like
starting out,
it's its own story. Yeah, exactly. Shows where it's like it's its own story. There's no huge universe that it feeds into that you have to like know all of these things to understand all the nuances. Being able to binge it and being able to like talk about it. But you're right, it's nice to be able to talk about it longer and be able to kind of revisit it week to week.
A good in between of this is Stranger Things, because Stranger Things is a whole universe, but they released it all at once, so it's like it's hard to like get into all of it because everyone like binged it within 24 hours. So like
exactly. And the discourse, like you said, just like kind of happened all at once, and then it kind of died down, and then it happened again just before they released,
and then afterwards, and then it died down, and
it was like a couple days, and then it died down, and it would be nice to like be
keep
able
going.
to kind of get a little bit deeper.
And just a last thought for me really is one of the things that I appreciated about this is that it was really unique and new and not from any kind of other universe, because I think, as much as I love the Marvel shows, as much as I love Star Wars and all of these other properties, because there's like the comics or the books or the video games or all kinds of other expanded universes.
Series,
absolutely.
I feel like I've been engaging in a lot of discourse of comparison. What's right, what's not right, what's canon, what's not. So it was very nice to go into like something completely new where I had no expectations.
Yeah, it's like original scripts and original like storyline. Yeah,
it was so nice, and so I really enjoyed it. Thank you to Peacock for this.
Because we don't get that enough these days. Like we do, but we get like reboots a lot, which I nothing against reboots. I love reboots. It's really hard to find an original script these days. So it's very amazing that, and like a sci-fi original script of all things, it's amazing and awesome, very awesome. Yeah.
Exactly. And a lot of them are also adaptations. Like Foundation was an adaptation. I haven't read the book, but I know that it was an adaptation, and there was discourse about
is there Expanse in that adaptation? No, right? Is it new?
It is an adaptation.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It's an adaptation of the book series, but it's so different from the book series.
Okay.
So like the first book is basically season 1, but in the first book of The Expanse, you only see Miller and Stephen Strait's character, Holden. Yeah. You only see Detective Miller and Holden's perspective. So you don't get side characters. So
like Game of Thrones mentality, essentially. Because that's how Game of Thrones is too,
But there's no interaction. So The Expanse is so different because the world building starts right at season 1, whereas in the books you don't see these other characters until like book 3, 4, 5. You know, so
wow. I just realized like all the shows that I've watched recently aren't original works. Like Cinnamon wasn't, Game of Thrones isn't. Like it's very hard to find now. Expanse isn't. Paper Girls wasn't. Wow. They were all those.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It was so exciting for me with this show. It was just kind of like
it's so novel. It's so novel to find these days. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a show I recently saw. I haven't watched it yet, but called Echoes or something. Echoes. I think it's on. Wait, is it on Apple TV? I don't know, but it also seems like it's also sci-fi. I'm not sure if it is or not. I just saw somebody recommending it.
I think Severance is original.
Severance? Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Oh, you should watch it. Oh, it's so good. You should watch it too, Monica, if you haven't watched it yet, and we'll talk about it.
It's on my bucket list.
Yeah, it's oh my God, please watch it. It's my favorite show of the year. Like, it's so good. We'll talk about it later. Sorry. This is a whole new episode. But yeah, it's so good. Speaking of sci-fi, it's good. Yeah.
And speaking of sci-fi, if you haven't seen it already, VOA.
Oh, I've heard good things.
So good.
I've heard really good things, yeah.
So good. Just go into it with zero expectation. Just go into it and just watch. Like, yeah. And I have rewatched it a few times, and every single time I rewatch it, I like find new things. I will let you know though, season 2 does not end with like they had more to tell in the story, but Netflix canceled it, so
yeah,
it is not a buttoned up conclusion. But yeah, it's not a buttoned up conclusion. But at the same time, one of the reasons I love the show is that it doesn't give you answers. It gives you some answers and it sets up some answers for you, but it's really like up to you to interpret a lot of things. And it's also like, there's so much going on that there isn't, I mean, there obviously is an answer that that the writers and the showrunners have for where the story is going. But there's also like, it's kind of, I feel like there's a little bit more of an like back and forth with the audience in that you get to experience and interpret things how you want.
Nice.
So yeah. So it's not like buttoned up in terms of a conclusion, and like I'm still holding out hope that one day they will eventually continue with the story. But there is more to the story that we don't get a chance to see right now. But it is totally worth it, even when it doesn't get wrapped up or buttoned up or anything like that, because that's not the point of it, in my opinion.
Please tell.
All right. Well, where can people find you on TikTok?
Do you want me to go first? So I'm Call Me by the Same Maria on TikTok. Like I said, I love overanalyzing shows and getting into films. I love fandoms and overanalyzing them. So follow me on TikTok. I do a lot of the Good Place content. I've done a lot of the Miss Marvel content. Love Marvel. I love going into just watched Star Wars for the first time. So I will be doing that. And any new show that's coming out, I've been watching it and analyzing it. So follow me on there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same. TikTok for me as well. My handle is .suhela. I think TikTok's now I got a message saying to change it, so I might have to like remove the dots in the beginning of it. But anyways, yeah, I'm on TikTok. I do a lot of like live reactions to shows that I'm watching, as well as theories and predictions for what may or may not happen. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to follow me there and like comment, like tell me your theories. I love seeing other people's theories, and I love seeing what other people have picked up on or interpreted that I didn't. So yeah, I really enjoy kind of the discourse around shows and movies as I'm watching them.
Excellent. Well, this is going to wrap up this episode of the Temple of Geek podcast. We want to thank everyone who tuned in today, and especially my 2 guests. I loved talking to you guys so much. Thank you for spending time with me today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit us up on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok using the handle Temple of Geek. If you want to check out some of our other episodes or show, why don't you head on over to templeofgeek.com. There you will find all sorts of content that pertains to the world of geek.
Please follow us on Twitter @Temple of Geek. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Temple of Geek. And remember to visit templeofgeek.com, your one stop for all things geek.
Goodbye.
This will conclude our transmission.